Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 37 of Bostic Health. I'm your host, Bradley Bostic. And as you know, on our show here, we talk about innovations in healthcare and things that are making healthcare more proactive rather than reactive. There's way too much that goes on where we just wait until people get sick or they have some kind of symptom. And at that point, maybe it's too late to really do as much good as you could do. My guests here today are actually taking a really novel approach to that idea of being proactive in healthcare, focused specifically on women's health. They've got a really cool company called Life Ahead that's closing this critical gap in women's healthcare by partnering with clinics and validating technology with real world data to deliver a trusted science-backed tool that for the first time allows women to proactively plan for fertility and menopause years way in advance. So I'm a big advocate for things that can make it so we flip the script on healthcare. Really excited about the work that you're doing. My guests here, Nich Gentry and Lizellen Follette, have a new business that's addressing this issue. Welcome to the show, Nich and Lizellen, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
By the way, I was on a show the other day where the gal who I've known for quite a few years kept calling me Bradley Bostwick. So which is way worse than saying Lizette rather than Lizellen. But nobody's perfect, right? So I just rolled with it. So really quick, I think Nich, you said you're joining from Brooklyn. Lizellen, where are you joining from?
I'm in San Francisco.
Okay, awesome. And I'm here in my studio in Chicago today.
Nice.
Just got back from a kind of a work and fun trip out in Telluride, Colorado, so we've been all over the country collectively here. Well, let me just turn it over to you initially, Lizellen, to give a bit of an introduction as an OB, how you got into that space, why you got into healthcare in the first place, and how you found yourself building this business. And I'd love to hear a quick intro from Nich as well.
All right, I'm going to start quickly to say that out of college, I worked for Lehman Brothers and helped reschedule the debt for the Central Bank of Zaire. And taking the Concorde once a month and then down to Kinshasa, Zaire was pretty clear that maybe they needed international advisors of Warburg and Lazar and Lehman. But really, to me, they needed medical care. And so I pivoted into OBGYN because women's health has always been an interest of mine, and I've been in private practice for 33 years. My big pivot now and the most important messaging that I think is finally happening is what happens in midlife for women and how does their healthcare change when fertility becomes no longer an issue and what happens in terms of health. So I'm on the board of the Buck Institute of Aging, which really is all about looking prospectively at how can we age gracefully and well over time, and what messaging do we need and testing do we need for women moving forward.
That's amazing. Well, glad to have you on the show here. Nich, how about you?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a pivot myself as well. I started in academia, got my PhD at UCSF, studying more of the relationship between sleep and aging of the brain. From there, I wanted to translate my skill set away from academia into something a little bit more impactful to people in the real world. And so I ended up at the Buck Institute, which is where I met Lizellen, which had just started an initiative in reproductive longevity, and worked there for a while as a flagship organization trying to change the narrative and build a true scientific community studying how ovaries age and how that connects to overall health. During my time there is how, I got interested in the subject and met our other co-founders as well, who are the scientific innovators behind the tool that we are commercializing today.
So the problem is really that it's been not understood how the aging of a woman and specifically their reproductive system, how that aging affects all facets of their health. Is that right?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about ovarian aging is it's still in women's bodies and we live 50 years past it. So if you think about it, it's the first entryway into understanding aging, and it's in 50% of the population. The ovaries change over time quicker than any other organ system. So we want all the insights that we can get, since it's really in some ways sort of the entry point of aging in general.
My mind is really spinning with this. Great to hear the background that you folks bring to this. Clearly, you're well qualified to do this. Which, by the way, as an aside, Nich, that concept about the effect of sleep on the aging brain is also very intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
I wear this Whoop band, which I mention frequently on the show, and you wear a Whoop? I love that. I
6 years in, 6 years
Okay,
in.
I was an OG as well. I had a good friend who originally told me about it, and I've had this thing on for, I don't know, it tells you how many days now, thousands of days.
I'm
And
in 1904, I think.
perfect. So the thing it's really pointed out to me is how these lifestyle factors impact my sleep and how that ultimately impacts everything else in my life. And it truly has had a profound impact on decisions that I make. And it seems like that kind of biometric monitoring, maybe even at some point, somehow that monitors what's happening with your aging all the way down to this women's health issue. I don't know. But I would love to hear more about why is this an area that's, you use the term underfunded. I'm curious to know what that means to you and why should there be more investment here? How does it overall impact the bigger picture of healthcare?
Yeah, women's health in general has been underfunded for a long time from a variety of angles, not just the private sector, but there's a variety of reasons for this. There's long been a stigma around even talking about many features of women's health, especially menopause, let alone doing robust research on it. So, I mean, this is something that affects half the population, yet, yes, it's chronically underfunded and under-researched. For example, only in 2016 did the NIH implement policy requiring basic research experiments to include a balance of sexes. As you can imagine, that leads to a lot of limitations in understanding women's health or women's bodies in general. And even in 93 was the only time clinical trials were required to have women in them at all. But we're starting to see a little bit of momentum there, and I hope we start to see some more.
And
Um, yeah.
certainly with the current administration, since we're now falling under DEI, we're going to have an uphill battle here in terms of looking at 50% of the population, because obviously the insights, nobody's here without their mother, and the insights on women's health is going to impact all of us. Clearly, I want to turn the narrative of let's get more funding. Let's not talk about what happened in the past. Let's move on because we have lots to do.
So a lot of diagnostics now are focused on blood testing and looking at different sorts of factors that exist in your body. In this case, it's ultrasound based. Is that right? Could you talk about how the technology actually works? How do you apply it?
Yeah. So today, standard tests for, I'll give a big picture about what the tool is to start things off. So we have, our tool uses information a woman would know about herself, as well as ultrasound, and for further personalization, potentially blood work and additional things in the future, to provide a personalized and long-term forecast of the timing to perimenopause and menopause for each individual person. Numbers for you specifically to give you a better idea of your own personal timelines.
So really quick, just to pause there.
Mm-hmm.
People throw around this term perimenopause all the time, all of a sudden. And I don't think very many people really know what that even means. Could you explain what that means?
So let me jump in. So perimenopause has been viewed, it's defined as cycle irregularity before loss of cycle at menopause. So it can happen in your 40s. It can happen for some women considered early menopause would be before 40. And it often, interestingly enough, seems to connect to what happened to your mother. So the definition of perimenopause is cycle irregularity of less consistency than what you're used to. And it comes with a whole constellation of other symptoms, some of which are relevant and some of them are not. But from the perspective of who's going through it, it's obviously relevant. But it's really saying that the change of ovarian function is sort of a heads up about what's coming.
Okay.
And that gives you an
And
idea.
So
that's
it's like your reproductive system's starting to shut down. Like it's the
Exactly.
early state indication that this is it's time to close the door on this chapter.
yeah. At the Buck Institute, at the organization I was working at, we called the aging of the ovaries, which was driving perimenopause and menopause, the canary in the coal mines for general aging. And so ovaries age faster than nearly every other organ in the body through a lot of the same biological principles. And menopause is partially the result of that.
Okay, that's super helpful. So when I think about healthcare, it's both how do you improve outcomes for the individuals in a way that makes it so they have the best possible health journey, and then also how do you address the economic issues? There's way too much cost. Healthcare is going to bankrupt our country. How does this innovation and this approach to more proactively addressing the reproductive aging for a woman play into the economics of healthcare?
Yeah, it'll allow people at its fundamental level to make better decisions that are more aligned with their own health, personalized healthcare. Some small concrete examples is right now, a woman in her early 30s goes in to potentially explore an option for egg freezing. And the readouts that someone would use in these initial fertility consults do not provide any higher resolution of whether someone might go through early perimenopause or not, other than a binary, it might happen in the next few years or no. So a woman might undergo egg freezing unnecessarily if she's got a longer term timeline, and she's doing it just in case. You also have the other end of things where knowing the better timing of perimenopause, the onset, will allow someone to more proactively manage symptoms, get hormone replacement therapy, or whatever other interventions are necessary for her in order to reduce the burden of symptoms throughout that period of life.
And
For Lizellen as well.
Well, clinically, from my perspective, there's two parts, right? You'd like to know what's coming. If you think about cost of healthcare, and if you read Eric Topol's new Super Ager book, one of the things that's really interesting is 12% of us are going to get breast cancer, right? But we're doing mammograms every year. So if we could identify who those 12% with, the rest of us could actually save money and not be doing mammograms all the time, right? So in this case, it's sort of like, if I know that menopause and perimenopause are coming within a timeline, I have two decisions to make. One, do I need to be using my ovaries? Egg freezing is not a guarantee. So the question about egg freezing in my mind is another incredible expense that I think should be reserved for the people that need it and not viewed as an insurance. But that's another topic. But in terms of menopause, in terms of bone loss, in terms of cognitive function, in terms of, cycle bleeding, all the stuff that can happen to women and how it becomes the pivot point of changes is so important for us to actually get ahead of. And we're always reactive, and we really need to be saying, no, wait a minute, why are we getting a bone density according to the USPSTF at 65? Ship has sailed. It's way too late. 15 years post menopause. Do it at 35, do it at 45, do it at 50, but do it early enough that you can intervene and prevent. And that'll help us on the savings of healthcare. We're not spending our money the right way.
That's interesting. So there's some kind of science behind this that you guys are basing the strategy on. What's that look like? Is there like peer reviewed research, and what is that research ultimately concluded?
Yeah, let me give you there's a bit of a story there. So the core science came out of one of our co-founders' labs, funded by the National Science Foundation, a federal entity. This is our CSO, Dr. Josh Johnson. He's been an ovarian biologist for some time, studied the dynamics. A big focus of his lab is studying the dynamics of when and how ovarian egg follicles either activate or remain in dormancy. So women are born with every follicle they will ever have, and the depletion of this over time is what dictates the timing of menopause. And so by understanding some of this additional information about how egg follicles activate, kind of the likelihood of when they will or not, he worked with a mathematician to forecast the trajectory of this reserve of eggs, which is used as the forecasting tool. So yeah, in one of those opportune connections that drive a lot of science, he started a collaboration with mathematicians at Yale and Utah, also part of our co-founding scientific team, to find a way to use this information to make this long-term personalized ovarian reserve model. And yeah, the positive response they received from others in the reproductive biology community compelled them to start exploring the idea of commercialization and connect with us eventually.
It's terrific. It's elegant, and it combines modalities that we now, hoping with AI, will actually continue to propel us forward.
Yeah, how does AI play into this?
Yeah, so the foundations of the tool are not AI based. Because AI, it would be more pattern matching to what other people's biology. The foundation is an algorithm based off your personal biology. AI plays into this in that as we accumulate data and more people come on board, we will be able to use that to further refine the model and do so more rapidly than we might have been able to in the past.
Cool. So you're on this entrepreneurial journey that I've been on many times, and I know it's. I had a business partner once who he equated it to hanging from the cliff by your toes. And I thought that was kind of an apt metaphor for that journey, because there's this I think romanticized version of being an entrepreneur, and people think, oh, you get to be your own boss and you get to do all this fun stuff and be on the cover of the magazine. In reality, it's typically, especially in healthcare and regulated industries, a 10-year overnight success. And you folks have very distinguished careers already, behind you, but you're somewhat early on this journey. What's the early experience been like? And some of our viewers, by the way, are entrepreneurs that are in the very same place you are, where they're raising capital or they're trying to get their first customers. So would love to hear just like the raw, very real experience that you're having as entrepreneurs with this.
Yeah, the experience so far, I mean, has been very much hanging off the cliff by your toes. But I find that exciting. We've had to be scrappy and kind of bootstrap a little bit so far, but with the help of the right angels, we've been quite successful at it. Yeah, there's you have to learn a lot. You have to solve a different problem every day. If you find that exciting, then that's right for you. I'm sure a lot of these the entrepreneurs that are your listeners are dealing with the consequences of not a great investment economy right now. It is notoriously more difficult for startups to start picking up early stage funding. But you just got to roll with the punches and scrap your way to figuring out a solution there. On our end, one specific thing that's been interesting to discover in these early stages that I was not aware of coming from outside of the entrepreneurial landscape is we're kind of in between a couple different fields, or at least investment circles. For example, we're not quite a biotech company because we don't have to develop a new device or medicine along with long-term clinical trials that goes in people's bodies. So we have a different timeline than a lot of those investors generally focused on biotech look for. But we're also not a straightforward digital health company, which might be more your listeners. Because we have real lab science being licensed from a university, which is something a lot of digital health investors don't really have an experience with. In my conversations, have kind of just like, they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They don't really know what to think about it. And I mean, in addition to this not being a stepwise improvement into some existing tool, it's something that kind of reshapes how women's health could operate long term. Makes it a little bit tougher to communicate. You got to educate on the foundations about what the vision could look like before jumping into the simple, this is X for Y, quick snippet elevator pitch that a lot of founders tend to rely on.
Yeah, it's probably hard to simplify it in some ways. And I know what you mean about the investor, especially the institutional investor world, where they like things to be relatively like clean and defined, and to try to minimize their risk. They're trying to say like, what bucket does this fit in? And is there some pattern recognition we can look at to say this is a high degree of likelihood to be successful? Is this a regulated device at 510K type, device? What is the regulatory reality here?
Yeah, so we did a lot of deep exploration on this. There are a couple different routes that we could go. We are going the under enforcement discretion with the FDA to begin with. What that means essentially is that we have all the prepared necessary documentation and our ducks in a row, and we just are positioning this as a clinician support tool, essentially, something that clinicians will use to guide decisions. It is not a diagnostic, so there is no full class 1 or class 2 software as a medical device requirement at this time. Down the line, as we get better and better and like more and more precise for individuals, people, then that will be the strategy when the time comes.
Makes sense. So Lizellen, you've had this experience with your practice where you're seeing patients, and now you're still seeing patients. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Still delivering babies, actually.
Still delivering babies. So you've got the most important patients. And now alongside of that, you've injected yourself into this entrepreneurial journey. What's that been like for you? How do you participate, and what have you learned and seen that maybe is new to you?
Well, first of all, I have to say that the entry point, I think Nich has made it simple for physicians to understand how this tool could make a difference in women's lives. This isn't a big ask. This is not a big complicated set of equations. This is really getting, an ultrasound measurement and some biometrics that most of us order, and then letting them do their math to sort of predict, basically loss of follicles over time, which is such a very important messaging and such a very important tool that, to me, it's not a big entry point, right? It's not a big lift. There's two ways I use it in my office. It would be one, the perimenopausal question, which, is quite popular right now in terms of looking at, what's happening to women's lives as the hormones change. But also looking at, okay, on the preventive tool, this is where it looks like the next, 5 to 10 years are looking like for you. What are you going to do with that information? And what other things do we have to make sure that we're actually asking questions about? So
And
it's
so this is
very clean.
so it's applying something that you had been thinking about, it seems like, for quite a while.
Exactly.
Um, that's so
Lizellen
cool.
also has experience with other startups as well before, so I'm sure this isn't too much. It's not entirely new to her.
Okay, so you're a
Anything that
serial startup person.
anything that actually is going to make women's lives better, I'm all in.
So is part of this helping a woman know what their window is to procreate, reproduce more scientifically? Like, hey, look, if you're planning on considering children and you're getting to a certain window, like just be aware that our algorithm can tell you that window closes most likely by a certain point.
That's part of it. There are other factors that go into fertility. There's egg quality. There's a lot of other things that happen as you age, but this is a major point of information that is previously unavailable for people prior to prior to a certain age of, yes, their approximate window.
And to me, the fertility aspect is such a small time in life that I sort of feel like that's not how I view it. I view it as using it as a normal tool of coming in and you're, mid 40s or early 40s or 50, and you're like, okay, what's happening? What's going to go on? Where am I? And what can I anticipate? And how can you help me through this journey? So to me, it's a very much broader application because fertility for many startups, they come out of the fertility space. But as a generalist, I'm seeing 90% of people that aren't doing fertility, right? Because they can't afford it. And so how can I use that tool to help them or to maybe help them navigate into support with fertility? But more importantly, what's the longevity part? What's the health span part that this will help us with?
You
Yeah,
mentioned, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, it was a really good point that she raised. This is part of the fertility aspect is one element. There's the menopause aspect, but we have a bigger vision, more future integration kind of into a standard of care. This could serve as a touch point for conversations that are not being had around the transition to menopause. A lot of women often do not claim they do not have a conversation with menopause until the symptoms are already starting to affect them. And so we envision a world where this could be really helpful, where at a standardized age, maybe 30, 35 or so, this is a touch point where women can have a conversation with their doctor, like standardized recommended scheduling for pap tests, to discuss what is coming, what that means for them, which are a lot of things that are not happening.
And you mentioned another co-founder. What's the makeup of the team beyond the two of you?
Yeah, so I'm leading the company. We have a few scientific co-founders. Josh is our CSO. Lizellen is our esteemed medical advisor, and we're small and lean right now, but looking to expand out pretty quickly.
And you've had some wins early, I think, right, in the market. So you're working with some clinics, or can you talk about where you are with getting rubber on the road out there with
Yeah.
the market?
Yeah, so because we were licensing from a university, that restricted how we were able to actually sell this for revenue early on. But we worked our way to getting as much of a market signal as early as possible as we could. So we've tested with a few fertility clinics, a few more generalist doctors like Lizellen, to get an idea of, do the doctors like it and do the patients like it? And the feedback has been pretty overwhelmingly positive. Almost every woman who sees they have access to this information is interested in having it, just to be more forewarned. And doctors, it feels like it gives them an additional tool in their tool belt to just have more confidence in the recommendations.
Does it have anything to do at all with identifying any kind of disease? Like if you're doing this or not?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. And is it like, do the physicians, do the OBs that use it, do the clinics that use it get some kind of reimbursement for doing the procedure? Or like how does the money work as it relates to this?
Yeah, so we are working on, as mentioned, we just finished up the license, so we are working on developing that sort of model for the payment strategy with clinics. The idea that we've tossed around with a couple of these clinics that have early interest is a subscription-based model for a select number of uses based on how many patients that they have, avoiding the per usage model because there are some legal implications about letting people scrape something off the top for elective procedures. Essentially, we don't want to incentivize in any case for a doctor to do more procedures than they believe are absolutely necessary.
So it's an elective cash pay kind of patient pay out of pocket.
To start, yes. I mean, these are clinics where a lot of people are paying out of pocket initially for tens of thousands of dollars in some cases for IVF treatment. People are paying out of pocket initially anyhow. We are targeting getting insurance reimbursement down the line, but because this is an entirely new tool that doesn't fit into existing classifications, we're going to need to get new codes, which I'm sure if you have any familiarity with healthcare is going to be a hornet's nest in itself. So we're working our way towards that.
Yeah, well, I think people are becoming more proactive about their healthcare and they're looking to own their own health. And I think women's health is probably
The
the
Whoop is an
epicenter.
example.
The Whoop is an example. And I think it's this convergence of biometric tracking and lifestyle choices and more proactive approaches to care that your clinician can bring to you that starts to flip the whole model around to where it's more of a value-based care model, which, as I shared as we were preparing for this, that to me is not something that's a silver bullet by any stretch, but for certain areas of health, it just makes good sense to get to where the clinicians and the payers and the patients are all on the same page with, hey, everybody does better if you're healthier. And it sounds like this relates to that in spades. So really cool what you're building here. So to take like a quick detour here. So you're in Brooklyn, you're in San Francisco. You guys are in like a couple of pretty cool hotbeds on opposite sides of the country. What do you do outside of trying to solve women's healthcare?
Is that one you want to start?
Yeah. So I have long learned through our association with Whoop, which obviously continues to make things even better, but long learned that as an OB in the last 30 years, if I can't sleep, I need to exercise. And so there was a couple of studies that came out recently that said, it's not a perfect 1-for-1 for replacement, but if you're delivering somebody at 3 a.m, which I did yesterday, you work out, you're going to get yourself better up on the sleep debt and recovery than you will. So never underestimate how important sleep is. But if you don't have sleep, work out.
That's a good tip. And it's interesting. I've created a Whoop team that I called Hard Reset. And it's been a lot of fun. Are you in one of those with other people?
No, I'm happy to join though.
You should join. Do you want to join Hard Reset? It'd be so fun. Okay, you have to be ready though. Well, I'll add you to the text thread as well. And it's definitely not all like politically correct or like.
Okay, fine. Don't worry. I'm good.
Well, for example, one of the badges of honor, which made me think of this when you said the 3 a.m. thing, is if you get a 1% recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what happened? How did you get a 1% recovery? So, all right, as a follow-up, I'll add you to the Hard Reset team. You can see at any point in time, if you want out, you let me know. How about you, Nich? What's up in Brooklyn outside of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, not to copy, but I am a big fitness nerd as well. That's a large part of my extracurricular activities, what I like to do outside of work. I'm going to maybe have to get on this Whoop train as well. Make a nice little.
I love it. Man, I never thought of that the Bostic health community of anybody who's a Whoop user could join the Hard Reset group. Hey, the more the merrier. It's started out with just a couple of us and it just kind of keeps growing. I think we have maybe a dozen or so now. But it is interesting because you can also, one thing that's really wild is the heart rate variability and how much that's affected, for example, by alcohol. If I just have like a drink or two, it's like my heart rate variability gets crushed. We have this one young gal who's in college. Her HRV is like 140 or something.
I know, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how that's even, I think she's a cyborg, but anyway, that's cool. I think people like you though, and I'll try to throw myself in that group where you are very much passionate about improving healthcare. It comes from, I think, a more genuine place when you're actually doing something for yourself. And admittedly, I like having fun, and sometimes that recovery score is a bit low, but overall, it's working out. And And actually in our building in the city of Chicago, there's a Lifetime Fitness and a Whole Foods. So you almost can't avoid, eating okay and getting a workout in. Just have the elevator stop at floor 9 and you can go into the Lifetime. So in any event, it seems like we all are in healthcare for the same reasons. I'm incredibly appreciative of your coming on the Bostic Health podcast and talking about what you're building. Certainly commend what you're doing. And it sounds like it could dramatically improve the lives of millions of women, and do it in a way that's efficient and not a big deviation from typical care processes. It's just adding another layer of sort of analytic, as I think about it, on top of the existing care pathways, and giving more information that can help your female patients understand how they're going to age with their reproductive system, and how impactful that is on their life overall. So thanks for the amazing contributions that you're making to healthcare.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's right on the money. We view this as an additional intelligence layer to help improve all aspects.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it, especially because no physician wants some other computer they've got to interact with or some other procedure they have to do. But if this is just a way to power up and, identify a signal that they were missing before, that's a pretty big deal. So, well, thanks for joining the Bostic Health community and being our feature on episode 37. I wish you all the very best of luck, and definitely hope that we can stay in touch. And then maybe a year from now, we could have you in the studio here in Chicago and talk about all the success you've had in the market with your business.
Great. Thank you for your time. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Great meeting. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of Bostic Health. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a Bostic day.